Cool. Thanks everyone for joining another user workshop of cmBuilder. Right, it's gonna be the last workshop of the year. I don't know if I have it in me to do another workshop before the end of the year, but you never know. Like surprises might happen. So yeah, so just jumping right into the workshop agenda. Right, today we're gonna talk about the tool that's coming next. Trenching tools not available yet for people to use, but I'm gonna already like explain a couple things about this tool because once we release it, we have like this video to help you guys like start using it right away. And then I'm gonna talk about a couple of kind best practices when you're trying to update your schedule, update your models, and so on. And in the end, we're gonna cover some tips and tricks. And as usual, how to keep your items. This recording will be available in 24 hours for you guys to download and watch it on, not download, but watch it on YouTube. We have a lot of good stuff on YouTube for you to check in as well, like all the workshops. They're focusing on like new features, more advanced features as well. And during this presentation today, you can use the QA or the chat to ask questions for the team. Okay, cool, cool, cool. So first step, just reminder about the voting, right? So, and let's go into the trenching tool. So what is a trenching tool? It's a new excavation operation that we are adding to our list of operations available where you will be able to create linear excavations quickly, right? So the idea is that you use one line as an input, and then from that line, we will create a trench profile that will be sweeping around along that line and removing the dirt that is intersecting with. And you can decide which profile you're going to be using, like it's going to be like a vertical wall or a sloped wall, and we plan to add more profiles later for you to choose. And you can also set a slope angle for the bottom. This is probably one of the most important parts of this tool because it's the currently is going to be our first excavation tool that will allow you to define an angle for the bottom of your excavation. Cool. So let's jump right into it and understand a little bit how we can use that, right? So this is the example of the picture, right? We can see the trenching already done over here. But if I want to create one from scratch, I can use this area over here to create a trench, right? So just to start, I'm gonna hide this whole kind of like area over here so it won't be distracting for everyone to see it. And we can focus on this area, right? So I'm going to start my excavation. Everybody's already using the new layout, right? So as you can see, the commands are not here in the bottom anymore. They are over here in the left. And now we have two options to start any tool in cmBuilder. One is to go through the icons over here on the left, where you can click and explore the options that you have for your tools. But also, if you have your tree expanded, you can start any of these tools directly from the tree by clicking on the plus button over here. So this will open that tool, laying for resources, for example. You can go in and open directly a category if you want to. So if I like want to add more showing elements, I can click plus over here and it will open directly on that category, right? So for the excavation tool, it's not different. So we can click on this plus button and it will open the excavation operations. And as you can see, we have a new player over here, our trenching tool. So when I click to add a trench, the input of a trench is going to be one single line, right? So we don't need to draw like an area like we do with the excavation cuts and fills. Basically, with the trenching tool, I can draw one single line. And when I hit confirm, that line will create our trench. And then we have like a bunch of different parameters over here to choose from and so on. And the first of the mall is the same idea as the other excavation operations. We have like a connection with the timeline, a color definition that you can choose, the colors that you want to apply to that trench, and so on and so forth. And the difference over here is the first difference is about the trench profile. So by default, the first trench that you create is gonna have this profile over here, which is a straight cut on the walls, and you can change what is the width of that trench by either like adjusting the shape over here on the handles, but also you can type in a value over here and that value will be applied to your trench. Okay, the profile you can choose between the straight profile or a sloped wall, right? And one of the next profiles that we want to do is like you'd select which wall is sloped, which wall is not. And later in the future, we want even to give you the option of drawing the profile that you want. So like you will be able to create benching and a bunch of like interesting stuff, right? So basically when you assign this profile over here to slope the walls of your trench, you can choose what is going to be the ratio of that slope over here in the bottom. So you can type in like 1 to 6, 6 to 1, whatever profile do you want. Okay. Keep in mind that this is going to be the horizontal ratio and this is going to be the vertical ratio. So if like sorry, the opposite. This is the vertical ratio, this is horizontal. So if I put like a high value over here, like 10, for example, it's going to be closer to a vertical wall. And if I put like a smaller value, it's going to be closer to a horizontal wall. Okay, cool, cool, cool. So sketch elevation, trench depth, and bottom elevation, it's pretty much the same in terms of like how you work with cuts, right? So sketch elevation is the definition of where your sketch is, and your trench is going to be your cut that refers to the trench is going to be calculated from that point downwards, right? So if I have a trench depth over here, it's going to be the depth is going to be this value. The bottom elevation kind of like a value is going to be the sketch elevation minus the depth, and then you get to this point over here. So you can choose what is going to be the trench depth that you're going to be doing. Like you can change from the handles over here. You can click on this to select the elevation in your viewer and so on and so forth, right? So this is the idea. And one of the most interesting things about the trench is that you can now create a sloped bottom. So right now, this bottom elevation over here of this trench is flat, just like you do in a cut. So if I measure 2 points over here, oh, I think that I already have like an angle applied to it. Sorry. So let's go back and take a quick look at the trench. Yes, I already have like an angle applied to it, but if I put 0%, you see that actually these two values are going to be the same, right? So have like this value, so just showing that this is a flat kind of like surface. But the difference, and this is something that a lot of you guys will be using and like leveraging from this, is that you can now define a sloped bottom, right? So we'll start with a percentage input, but we plan to have like other kind of like types of inputs. For example, select what is the highest point of your trench and what is the lowest point of your trench, or type in a value for those, and then like the whole trench will itself like adjust to that kind of like shape. Cool. So yeah, so now I can go and change this kind of like grading over here. And if it's a lot, you can see that you create like a vertical wall over here on the side. But that's mostly like what you're gonna do with your trenching, right? And the rest of the trenching follows the same kind of like idea as the other operations, right? So you go into your tree structure and you can see where your trenches are and so on and so forth. And one great thing about the trenching is the ability for you to create these excavation cuts with curves quickly, right? Instead of like you doing like a specific shape and like you have to do an area, you can follow roads very easily just by inputting a line, right? So in that sense, it's very important for everyone that's using these tools or excavation or any sketching tools to understand how these kind of like operations over here work, right? So I already did like a workshop that I focus on explaining each one of these operations, but you can always go into our workshop list and, oh, sorry, our tutorial videos. If you go over here in the tutorial videos, you can also see on the video number 7 is very focused on the sketching tools. And this is something that I really like suggest that everyone watch this video, because it will empower you to be more efficient while you're drawing with your sketches and so on and so forth. Cool. So that's the idea. And then you can create your curves and all of that using this tool. Okay. What else? Yes. So if I go over here my excavation plan, I can keep expanding this trenching, like using the same idea as the other excavation operations, right? So if I do like a stage 2 for my trenching over here, I can go in and then go back into my excavation plan. And if I want to expand this trench over here, I can go and duplicate this guy, bring this trench like below, and then you can edit the sketch and then you go and expand this trench. And now on step number 2, that trench is gonna have like a different length. Cool. So I'm very curious to know what all of you think about this tool. Like, what you think about using this, and like if you have any questions. So please, like, put in the chat any questions that you have about this tool. If you want me to represent something right now about this one, and so on and so forth. Cool. So backfill for trench, same idea as the backfill that you would do for your excavations, right? So you can go in your stage 3 over here, and then you can like select this one and do a backfill. So if you go in your add operations, you can create a fill. And to backfill this trench, you just need to do a fill that is bigger than the area of your trench. And then you click over here, fill to terrain. And this will create a backfill that is going to be this, it's going to bring the excavation to that same elevation. Cool. So you can see over there that now this backfill happened. And I always suggest that you do your backfill with the color of the map so you can see it back to what it was before, unless you want to keep that brown shape, brown color, just to highlight the areas that you created your trench for. Okay. Is it only for one line, or can you create web type design for stormwater design? You can only use one line as an input, but you can duplicate that line and do like the web type thing that you just mentioned. So let's say that I want to do that over here. I can go into my excavation and I can create a trench, and then I'm going to create a line over here. And then I'm not sure if I know exactly what is the web type of design that you're mentioning, but I think that I understand a little bit. So I'm gonna go ahead and put like some values over here for the trench, and I have my trenching going on over there. And I'm just gonna go ahead and duplicate this guy, right? And when I duplicate like an operation, nothing changes on my view because that operation is exactly the same as the previous one. And since they are both like removing volumes, like there's nothing else to remove on operation number 5 because operation number 4 already removed everything. So if you want to do something like that, what I believe that it's what you're mentioning over there, I can go and edit the design, and then I can maybe do an offset, and I can bring this line to the other side over here, and then like we'll apply the same trench but in another location with the same parameters, with like same everything. Is this more or less what you wanted, Bridget? Let me know in the chat over there. And in terms of like sheeting, soil stabilization, and so on, we're going to use the resources that we have, right? So if you go into the resources, you can find over here in excavation, ensuring more so intersection lines. Oh, yeah, intersecting lines, it's totally fine. You can take that same line over here and you can like adjust the shape and then make it intersect. It's not gonna like break or anything. Basically, you're just doing another cut operation that goes above the other one, right? And depending on the parameters and the shapes of these operations, you're gonna see the result as it is over here. Cool. You can make it match the bottom of the other one, and so on and so forth. So sheeting, soil stabilization, and all of that. So you're gonna find all of that in our resource library. So if you go over here in resource library and you click on the category equipment and vehicles, and then the category excavation and shoring, you're gonna find like a bunch of options over here for you to do shoring. And I will cover a bit of this in the end of our session today. But for trenching, you're probably going to be using the trench box. You can search like trench over here and see like what the software is going to give you. So you can go ahead and put a trench box, right? So you can put them one by one if you want to, or you can create a polyline. And then from the polyline, you can draw the shape. and then it will create that shape over there. Like one thing to keep in mind is that you probably for trenchings, if you want to project that on the terrain, you need to assign the line correctly. So you see that the line is not referring to the input line over here. Is not referring to the middle of the trench box, but like one of the sides. So basically for that, you just need to go and snap this line to one of the faces of the trench, and you can see that it will kind of like recreate that trench over there. So there's a reason why this trench box is showing up on the top, is because that line is so close to the interface of what is the lower part of this excavation and the upper part of this excavation that is literally on top of that. So the software doesn't know if like if the object's supposed to be placed on the ground or above ground, right? So you can change this a little bit by just moving this line to the side, and then like it will start to follow the shape of your excavation. Or you can choose to make this object not projected on the terrain, and then it will follow the same elevation for the whole kind of like placement. It will be like a flat elevation. And then you can go over here and adjust the shape of the strange box to kind of like create the area that you want. Okay. So in this case, we are like, I want this to be projected on the terrain. Of course, the kind of like height over here is too much. So you can like go and adjust this a little bit more to whatever you prefer. But like, in my opinion, I prefer to have like part of the resource on the ground and have it like flushed with the top, because then it gives like a better kind of like visual to this. Okay. But once I hit done over there, you can see that whole kind of like shoring happening with the trench. Cool. Another question from Eugene: importing pipe invert elevations to generate trenching. Shane, do you want to take this one?
I did, kind of, in the chat.
Oh, we have a plan for doing this. Okay, cool.
Yeah, we have a plan for doing this. It's a two-part plan. Part one is both. We're actually going to start with 3 lines and then move to trenches of the ability to set the point elevations of each point along the sketch. And then the second part of that is being able to import files to generate the lines with the elevations on them. Well, and yeah, thanks for the feedback on that, Eugene.
Depending on the file they're importing, you might be able to use that as like a projections. So I'm not sure exactly what type of file format you guys use over there and whatnot, but you be able to, we can try to like take the pipes that you have and then kind of like project lines for that, and then just adjust the inverts, just to make sure that things align properly. Cool. So what else about trenching? I think that's it. Yeah, so like, of course, you can create the whole sequence of execution with like placing resources, the type of shoring that you have, and so on and so forth. Also, I really suggest that depending on what you're doing, it might be interesting to create lines as templates, right? Because then you can project those lines and keep using them for like other operations. So you won't need to keep like snapping things together all the time. So for example, if I were to create like a trench over here that I know that I'm gonna have like, I don't know, 3 sections of that trench, I could create a 3D line first, and then I will create like my first line, then the second one, and then this one, right? And this is a line. It is only one line, but it has 3 segments. And then like when I'm gonna go create my trench, I can now project this line. So if I click on this and click on the line, I will take the same sketch of the line, and then I can just delete the part of the line that I don't want to represent at this stage. And then I keep that like organized in that way, because like later on you might want to use this line to project other things like the resource that I have over here, right? So I could what is it? Yeah, this one. So I could use this resource like input to be this line, for example, and then save some time with it. Sometimes you want to do like some excavation, kind of like compounding excavation operations. For example, I'm going to show this later, like how to create curved ramps with this trenching tool, right? Actually, let me show right now. If I if I think I can do it like quickly. But basically, let's say that I want to do a curved ramp on this area over here, right? So the trenching tools, because it's the only tool that we have today that allows for a sloped bottom, for you to create a curved ramp, you would need to use that trenching tool to create a fill first, and then you cut them back, right? So this it kind of like requires a little bit of like a trial and error to get to the point that you want. But this is at as of now, this is a workaround that we plan to kind of like actually create a tool for you to input a line, and then the curve ramp will show up, right? So what are the options that we have today to create a curved ramp? We have one option that has been there for a while, that is as a resource. So you can create a resource, and then you can go over here and then just type in ramp, and then you see that there is a dirt curved ramp, and then I can place this ramp anywhere on my site. This is a resource, okay? So I'm just gonna go and snap the face of this resource to the face of this excavation. I'm gonna flip this guy because I want it to be turned the other way. And then I can go ahead and do my adjustments with like the kind of like the adjustment tool over here, right? So I have like a couple of options, and I can also like rotate this. It feels like the tail of a happy dog, but you can operate that way as well. The only thing about this is that this is a resource, right? So it's following a completely different dynamics and mechanics in the back end and so on. So like it doesn't go in your QTO and things like that, right? So, but it can be used, and like it's super helpful because it's easy to adjust, right? But if you want that to create more complex shapes and so on and so forth, you can create kind of like a combination of fills and cuts and trenching to create like a ramp. So in the sense of like creating another ramp, like similar to this one over here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna first go into my excavation operation, and I'm gonna create a fill. And then from that fill, I'm gonna go in and then do something like this, right? So I'm doing this for the first time now, but so I apologize if I won't be able to create like a most satisfactory kind of like result, but let's see how it goes. So if I create a fill over here, that brings me back to my terrain, or fill to height, where I want this to be the height of this fill to be something like that, to have like, I don't know, maybe a slope on the outside or things like that. You can do that as well, but I can, let me just do with the fill to height. And then from here, I can go and create a trench that would be a curve, right? So I'm gonna create that trench first, and then I'm gonna do a curve, and then like delete this one. And from this, I can now like start to adjust this trench to make it create my ramp, and then I remove the parts that I don't want from that trench, so like that's the idea over here. So I'm gonna go and create like a wider trench, something like that, and then I can go and adjust my slope over here at the bottom, so like 15%. I'm gonna do like a couple of like options over here to see if I can get like closer to that area. 0.5, something like this. Anyways, so I can have like something like that, and then I can create a cut to remove these operations over here, right? So I can go ahead and create a cut to remove the exceeding part of this curve of sorts. I know that this is not perfect in terms of like quick to do, but like it's the workaround that we would suggest as of today to make sure that you can create like a good output for your curve ramps, right? So let me just adjust this part. Okay, let me connect this to, and then when I hit confirm, now from here, I can make this a sketch elevation over here in the high point, the bottom elevation. I'm gonna flush with this. And then if I want to slope this, I can go into adjust and then slope in, and it will create like a slope that is a little bit crazy, but we can deactivate these to kind of like do that. The only thing about sloping this is that the slope doesn't follow exactly the shape of the ramp. So like sometimes you will be able to create exactly what you want, sometimes you won't, right? So in the case that I want to create like a slope over here, I need to make sure that my sketch elevation for the cut is flushing with like this part, and then I can go and do the slope in, right? So, but as you can see, the slope doesn't follow, the top part of the slope doesn't follow the ramp. So you have to make some adjustments to make it work, you know? Yeah, one thing that you can do to it now that I just had an idea. Sorry, guys. I just had an idea on how to work it to make this slope work. That would be basically duplicating this trench, so it will show the trench in the exactly same size, and then you can put that after the cut, and then over here you just increase the size of your trench, and it will cut this part for you. So you can do something like that. There you go. Okay, so this is our trenching tool and ways to create like some sort of like curved ramp with it. And I wanted to show this because like I spent some time working with like an example of a project where like if you want to create like more complex shapes and things like that, you can still do it. Like this is all done using trenches and fills and things like that. So it can give you like a more control about how you do different access points and so on and so forth, right? So it's a lot of, in this case over here was a lot of trial and error to get to this point. But keep in mind that the trench tool is not made to do this. This was all a workaround, like kind of like a test, but just to bring it to the limit to see how much we can do with that tool. Okay, but that's the main idea. Why is Santa Claus kind of like truck flying over here? I don't know. So let's go like that. Cool. Just to
The
show a
Christmas
little bit
miracle,
of, yeah,
Pedro.
Christmas
The
miracle.
Christmas
There you
miracle.
go. One of them. So just to show like what are the capabilities of something like this, right? So we can explore this more if you guys have like other projects that would require some more complex shapes for access and ramps and so on. Just let us know and we are gonna help you guys. Cool. Okay, so this is our trenching tool. Now we're gonna go into best practices on how to update schedules and 3D models, right? So this is something that we have like a lot of customers kind of like trying to update their schedules, and like usually we can find like a lot of different solutions for that. But it's also important to start from a point where you kind of like set up your schedule to be like easier to update later, right? So one thing that I always suggest is that because updating the schedule in a 3D model is like a action that you can't undo, I will suggest that we always try that to do that on a duplicate scenario, right? Just to make sure that you are not kind of like messing your main scenario with like an action that cannot be undone, right? And also to make sure that if you're bringing in a schedule, let's say an XER file, and then later on you want to, like a P6 file, later on you want to update that schedule, like make sure that like the export procedure that you did first will be applied to the second one as well, because it's a lot of data to compare, right? So if you think about of a schedule, you're gonna have like 2,000 lines, 3,000 lines, and things like that, and then it's hard for you to compare that much data like at once. And the same thing with a model, right? You have your models, you're gonna have like 40,000 objects in there, 50,000 objects in there, and then like to make sure that you're always working with the same process, so like things are a little bit easy. Okay. About the schedule, I'll pass it to Shane. Shane will explain a little bit about the things that are to come on the import schedule. And then I'm gonna, after he explains what is the next step of our import schedule procedure, we're gonna show a little bit of like some best practices on what you can do today to make sure that your schedule and your models are kind of like good to work with and efficient. Okay, Shane, take it over, bro.
Okay. This is just a preview of what it is going to probably be like. It's in progress. Once it's all come out, Pedro will probably give a more detailed explanation of how to use it and showing it. Some changes may happen between what you see here and what we actually have in the end. But basically, I'm going to talk to three parts. One is when you come in and import your schedule on the second page of the import schedule flow, we're going to have this thing where you have your existing task and then what's your new task that you want to connect to. And this way you can reconnect from a different task to something else. You can create a new milestone from one of your other tasks from one of your tasks, or you can link to an existing milestone. So you can bring in a new task and tie it to the milestone that you had already previously created. And this allows you to just have more flexibility. You don't have to make sure, because right now you have to import the schedule at the beginning of the process. This lets you bring it in partway through if you want, or switch to a different schedule, switch to a different format, things like that. In addition to this, we will also have, I don't have UI for this, but we're going to finally allow the ability to batch delete milestones. I think the main reason that people ask for that right now is because they import way too many schedule tasks and then they want to undo that. And so batch deleting milestones will be how we do that. And then the third one is we're going to change the flow a bit for how you import Excel or CSV files from as a schedule. It's not going to be as a like right now. You can bring in a schedule. It can be like XCR, MVP, CSV, whatever. We're going to separate. If you bring in a schedule, it comes in as a schedule. If you bring in an Excel sheet, it comes in as a list of milestones. And so we're just going to have one date column, and it's going to have the existing pairing IDs. You don't have to understand how all this works if you don't want. But basically, the idea is you can download your schedule, you can add some milestones, you can rename milestones, you can redate milestones, and then when you bring it back in, it'll just update those milestones for what you want. So this will be more used as a method to quickly update any tasks or files that you want. You can still use it as your schedule sync system if you want to like export your schedule as an Excel file and then make some changes there, then bring it in. That's still possible, but the primary idea here is that it's just easier to edit all these things at once, because we were thinking like, okay, let's make all this a lot easier to do in Builder. And it's like, yes, we can do that, but no matter what, Excel is going to have way more tools and options than we will ever have for editing tables. So why not give that power so that people can make those updates if they want? I know, Pedro, you're probably hoping for more time of me spending on this, but I'm already done.
No. That was great. I just hope that all the positive reactions that we had about this is not because it changed from Pedro to Shane. It was all about the product, you know? But yeah, let's go. Let's come back into this where
You were here. You're right there.
Sorry?
You're right there on the screen.
There you go. Yeah, so these are all great updates that are coming, and I'm very excited about those, especially because I know that this is gonna solve like a lot of things that customers have been requesting and so on. Like the bulk delete, for example, it's like something that we help a lot with customers when they're trying to deal with that, but also the idea that you're gonna have like it will solve this issue that I'm gonna talk about over here, where you're working with a hybrid schedule. And hybrid schedule is a schedule that has milestones that are connected to a file and milestones that are not connected to a file, like a manually created milestones. So with this process that Shane is explaining over there, you'll be able to take like all those manually created milestones and connect it to a proper file and keep them like synced, right? So what I want to show over here is going to be quite quick, is that like one is that CSV exports can help you with quick updates, right? So if you're working in a scenario that like you already have the gift game that's going on in the chat right now is crazy, but the idea is that you can simply go and open your project schedule, and then you can download the schedule. When you download the schedule, basically it's going to be a CSV file that has like all of the names of your schedule, of your milestones, and also the dates for them, the end date. Depending on how you created this, it might show up over here. If these are milestones that you created, that you export into the CSV, they were taken from a existing schedule file, it will show up with an end date over here. But if you manually create those milestones, they won't have an end date, and they also won't have a pairing ID, right? So what is the idea over here is that now I can take this file that I downloaded, this CSV, and then change a bunch of names over here, change a bunch of dates and whatnot. And because of these pairing IDs, they are showing these numbers. Like the software can now track what is what and then apply those changes when you bring this schedule back with the update schedule option over here, right? So then you can select the file, can select your CSV, and then bring it over, and all those changes will be applied to you. One thing that might block this process is that whenever you have like manually created milestones like these two over here, right, you're gonna have like blank values on your pairing ID, and the software doesn't understand that those are like unlinked milestones. So you need to put like some fake IDs over here just to so the software can kind of like understand that they are supposed to be brought in, but they are not going to link to the manual milestones that are over there. What's going to happen is that we're going to create a duplicate of these two. Like, so you're going to have like another host suites completed, another occupancy going on over here. So if I try to do this right now, which I didn't test before, so hopefully we will be okay with it. So I can bring it over, and something went wrong. Okay, I don't know what went wrong, but I don't want to spend too much time over here. This is kind of like a testing scenario, so like things might not
Wait,
work
wait,
exactly.
Pedro, submit a ticket to yourself, and then
Oh,
follow me.
okay, cool. Yes, good idea.
That's how
So
you do it.
like
That's how you do it,
right
buddy.
right now, like if I like I'm working with something and I'm trying something didn't work like this, I'm gonna expect bring this file in and so on, and it didn't work. So first thing they need to do is to take a screenshot of this, like just to capture the message over there, and then go over here in the bug report and just like communicate to the team, send a screenshot over here. Like we answer these things super fast. So please like interact with us as much as you can so we can jump in and help you with this process. Okay. So we can identify what's going on, what is the data that is causing that conflict and so on. Right. So
I'm gonna jump in. Let me jump in.
yep.
I'm gonna tip our cards here to the value of showing up for the user workshop is that Thursdays are our big bug busting days. So if you have something and you're not sure, just know that Shane and the team will most likely be pinging you on Thursdays to ask questions and go through stuff. So we do try to obviously we triage bugs as they come in, and if something's critical, we'll jump on it right away. But in general, just want you to let you know that every single week on Thursdays, you may hear from us if you've submitted bug.
Yep. So another quick tip on this is that like when you're starting to update your schedule, things might shift in terms of like they go to different milestones that you were not expecting and so on and so forth. So a great way to understand like what's going on is to go over here in the group by and then change this to start milestone, because this will give you a list of all milestones. A lot of people don't use this. I wish they use this more. But this will give you like a list of all the milestones that you have in your project. And then in here, what you have is not just the parts of your model that are connected to it, to these milestones, but also all the other objects, right? So you can see like what labels, what resources, what zones are set up to start at this date, right? And the reason why it's important to consume this is because whenever you bring in like a new file, like a new schedule, your objects might kind of like change in order where they appear, and this is a great way for you to identify what's going on, with which part is connected to your milestones and so on, right? And when you get to the point where you have like your beam parts aligned, linked with those as well, you're gonna see those as in here as well. Cool. So great way to understand these changes. For manual updates, whenever you're working with a milestone, with a schedule that is all manual, is not linked, and you change your dates, you can also always use this shift all following milestones to like move everything that comes after this date, either forward if you kind of like delayed your date, or backwards if you kind of like your date is earlier than the before, right? So it just like applies that kind of like delta in the days to all the following milestones, but not to the previous milestones. So that way, if you're working manually with these things, you should, if you're working with like a manual schedule, you should do these changes from the first milestone towards the end, because then you start pushing things and bringing them back like in the way that you prefer. Cool. Okay. And the last thing over here is that like sometimes people are using like an Excel sheet for this, a CSV, and you're using different date formats depending where you are in the world and so on. And ChatGPT is a great tool for you to convert these date formats. You just can just like copy paste like all the dates over there and say convert all of the dates from this format to this one, and then you bring them back to their CSV file to follow the date format that we have over here on the top, right? So that's also a great idea to do that in bulk and so on. In terms of like 3D models, actually, let me move forward over here. Then I'm gonna go back to the 3D models. So I'm gonna try to explain this a little bit quick and like just to help like people that are working with hybrid schedules. So what is a hybrid schedule? Is a schedule that has linked milestones and unlinked milestones, right? In each one of these milestones, we have like items connected to them, resources, annotations, imported models, and excavation, right? So my suggestion for this type of update, if you have like a new schedule file, or if you have like if you're working with your CSVs, and it's, even if you're working with CSV, like we won't be able to relink the milestones. There are two options for you to follow when you want to do that update. Option one is my suggested option, but it takes a little bit longer, but it will keep all your milestones linked to that new version, right? So that option is whenever you bring this, all the unlinked milestones will come as duplicates, like I mentioned, right? So you're gonna have, like in this case over here, two milestones, three, one that is coming from the new import that you're bringing, and two is coming from the it's already there because this is like unlinked milestone. So you're gonna have like this duplicate over here, and then you should, in this case, take all of these elements and move them and connect them to the milestone number 3, right? So to do that, using this kind of like view over here is perfect because you can select the group of parts and then just like activate the other milestone and say all of these will show up at this date, right? So it's very easy to do that, but it will take longer depending on how many of these milestones you create, how many manual milestones you have in your file. And the only thing that you won't be able to use that view, this view over here with the start milestone, is the excavation operations, because the excavation you need to adjust them from your excavation plan, right? So then you would need to move the operations to the new milestone from here. Then, so it's easy also on following updates, because then you now will work with a schedule of a sequence that is completely linked with your file. The other option that is faster is to keep using the unlinked milestone, right? So if you bring in that new version and you have like a duplicate, remember that like this, all everything is still connected to the manual milestone, and then this is a duplicate that has nothing in the inside, so you can simply delete this one and keep working with your manually updated milestones, right? The only thing is that like if you do that, you continue working with a hybrid schedule, but it's faster to update because the only thing they need to do is to delete the duplicates, right? But also the other thing is that if you keep doing updates and so on, you will always have to review these manually created milestones. So it's kind of like a trade-off that you need to select, but all of this is only until Shane deployed that new version of our schedule format. Okay, so if this is becoming kind of like a pain point for you, please email Shane directly.
Thanks, Pedro. Thank you. Keep in mind, I don't do any actual work.
It was my revenge because you got more reactions on your part of the presentation. There you go. So the second thing that I want to talk about is the 3D model updates, right? So one thing is that you can only update files that are using the same format. So you cannot bring in like an FBX file and then try to update that FBX file with an IFC file, because these files are completely different in terms of how they are organized in the backend, in the code, right? So you have to use the same file format. And two, and I'm going to show these two items at the same time. So using the sequencing view to identify new model elements, but also double check the review dashboard. So what does this mean, right? So let's go over here in a scenario that I have a 3D model. So I'm going to isolate this model, temporarily hide everything else, and isolate the map. So the model is hidden right now because like all of these parts are connected to my milestones. So if I keep like flipping through my milestones over here, you're gonna see these parts showing up on our view based on the sequence of execution, blah, 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 right? So I have like all of these parts in there. They are like, this model doesn't have any slabs. So my new version of this model will have the slabs. And the thing is that, like, again, working in a duplicate scenario, you need to just go in and bring update with a new model. And I'm going to bring in a new version of this model that has the slabs attached to it. So let's go and bring this guy over here. And please, everyone should always pay attention to this view over here. Like a lot of you guys ignore this page, but and if you're not seeing this page whenever you're importing your models, you need to turn it on the user preferences. This will allow you to filter like the IFC classes that you want to bring in, the ones that you want to keep out, right? So once I upload it, it would take the time and whatnot. So it's uploading on the back end. If you want to see the state of this upload, you can click over here and beam import, and it will show over here that there is a model in conversion going on. Once this is done, I'm gonna have like this little tag showing up for this model that says that there is an update available. Right. So while this is going, I'm going to show you how you turn on that view. So if you go into user settings and click on import, you should turn this on to always ask on IFC or RVT upload, right? Because then you'll be able to filter these, or you can set up your own kind of like preset and turn this off over here. Okay. So there you go, man. Saying exactly what I want, like the furniture kills model performance, right? So not just furniture, but like everything that has a lot of small parts and like curves and things like that, complex geometry in general. So like complexity and quantity is what kills the performance, right? But basically that conversion is done now. I have this new tag over here saying that it's an update available. And one thing that is very important when you're doing the review is to make sure that you take a look at this dashboard, because this dashboard will give you like an idea of like how many parts are new, how many has been removed, and things like that. So you can like go in and like scroll down over here to see like some of the changes and so on and so forth, right? So when you update this version, like we apply that new version over here, and the first thing that we're gonna notice once this new version is applied is that you see that the sequencing that was applied before remains the same, right? So I still have a sequence that is applied to this model, but only for the parts that remain the same from the previous version, right? So as I keep flipping through my milestones, I'm seeing these parts coming in, but nothing's applied to these labs, because these labs are the new stuff that I brought in with that new version of the model. So sometimes it's very easy to understand those changes, right? So like when you bring in a new model, you can see right away what is new. But if you're working with like all your like scenario turned on and like a bunch of parts in here, and then like you were trying to understand like what are the new parts and you cannot visualize them very well because they are smaller than the slabs or whatever, you can simply click on the sequencing view, and in the sequencing view it will highlight all the parts that are new and that are unsequenced in red. So you can work with just those parts if you want to. So you can go over here, temporarily hide everything else, and then hide the map. Now I'm looking at only the new parts that are unsequenced, and it's easy for me to now take a decision and go and select those parts and then apply, put them on the right buckets in my kind of like scenario, right? So I like to work when I'm sequencing, I like to work with my milestone manager open over here and with this view, because it's easy enough to simply go in, apply, activate one milestone and say begin from this milestone. But of course, like I use the shortcut Control B to do that. Okay, cool. Whew. It took longer to cover this part than I was expecting. So moving forward to the next thing related to the tips and tricks, I already talked about like using the trenching tool for curved ramps and so on. Now, one new thing that we have over here is that this is more for the admins and the companies and so on, is that in your user list now, if you go back over here, go into company settings and user management, now you have this little button over here, export user list, that will allow you to download a file, next CSV file that we have like a little list of all your users and like their types, their roles, and what is the status that they have over there. So like for admins and the companies, this is a great way for you to manage like a bunch of people and like see where they are, like make changes and whatnot. But it's an export only. You cannot bring it in, right? So it's just for you to see who are the people that are currently in cmBuilder. Okay. Next step, storing resources and using resources for grid lines. Okay, so let's try to cover this in the last 10 minutes. So storing resources, which one is the one that I want to use? This. Okay. So let's go into my excavation over here and delete all of those elements. For everyone in the call that have not yet applied the new version of excavation to your scenarios, please do so, right? And to do that, you need to open your project and see the scenario page where like you can see all the scenarios. And then from here, what you need to do is to click on your scenario that you're working on, go into scenario settings and change this to V3. So this will guarantee that you're working with the latest version of our excavation tool that is um, way faster than the previous one. Okay.
Pedro,
Yeah.
can I clarify? Just
Yes.
for that's for old scenarios. So all new scenarios are automatically there. So if you created something in the last few weeks,
There you go.
you don't have to worry about it. So just those are for like if you're opening up an old one. Is that automatic for? Yeah, it's automatic for new ones, Anthony. So anything that you've done in the last few weeks, you don't have to worry about that. It's just like if you have an old scenario from a year ago and you open it up again, you're gonna want to switch it over to the V3.
Cool. Awesome. So talking about shoring, in our library, we have like a bunch of different shoring options, right? So if you go into our library, go into all equipment and vehicles and excavation shoring, you're gonna find over here a bunch of different options, right? So is there any downside of upgrading node scenario? Will it alter any existing excavations? Shane, do you want to comment on that?
It shouldn't. We've done a lot of testing. There's nothing we can find that will have a negative impact. Every time we found some sort of difference that was notable, it was because it fixed something. So it should always make it better. If that doesn't happen, let us know. It would be a surprise.
There you go.
Yeah, I think the intention is to at some point just force it to all old ones, but we're being a bit cautious just to make sure we don't mess anything up from an old scenario.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's more of the people who would do it are currently getting that schedule thing out.
Mm-hmm. So coming back to shoring, like we have like a bunch of options in the resources over here that you can use for shoring and so on. And all of them kind of like have its own singularity about how you're going to change the adjustments, how you're going to input the line and so on and so forth. Like, so for example, I have two resources over here. All of these six shoring methods that you see in the screen, they're all using one line input, and that line is being placed on the top part of this excavation bottom over here, right? So these are all the same, but as you can see, these four items, they're growing downwards and these ones are growing upwards, right? So why did we create things like this? Because sometimes you want to like show your shoring like by simply inputting a line at the bottom of your excavation, right? So if I want to take this shotcrete wall over here and I want to put that line to be at the bottom of my excavation, but following this wall, you should never place the line exactly on the wall because what I mentioned before, the software doesn't know if it's supposed to be up there or down here. So you can always adjust these lines by creating like a sketch offset, right? So if I bring this sketch offset and bring it over here, you see that now my shoring is starting from the bottom and going all the way up, right? So this is one way of inputting shoring, but several other shoring methods, you're gonna see that it will grow like downwards. So in this case, all of these shoring elements that you place and they grow downwards is because we want to use the line input for those elements to follow the grade on the top part of your excavation. So for example, if I take this line and put it over here, as you can see, my resource is showing up a little bit to the side compared to where the line is, right? But also the resource is kind of like following the grade over there and it's not being placed anywhere. But if I move this line input a little bit towards the top part of your excavation, you're gonna see that now that top part of your shoring is following the grade on that part, right? So it flushes with the top part of your grading. So it's easier, it's more accurate to represent like what's going on in real life. And we need this line to be on the top part of that because that line controls the elevation of each one of these instances, right? So it needs to know what is the shape of the grade. So you have to put that line on top on the top part, but your element, your resource is going to show up a little bit to the side. And the easiest way for you to visualize what's going on is to turn the settings on, like, and then go into live preview and turn this on so you can see exactly the changes of your sketch, what will happen with your 3D model. So when I hit confirm now, this top line over here is making sure that all the parts of that resource is following the grade part. So like if I go now and then snap this point to this face, snap to this point to this face, you see that my resource is following the grade and going down along with the terrain. So it makes something more accurate, right? And then you just need to go adjust and then bring this elevation down over here, and then you have like your shoring done to that wall. The same thing will apply to other resources, like it's kind of like you need to place it first to see how that mechanism works for that resource specifically. But if you ever try to place a shoring and you see things like this, is because your line is supposed to be on the top grade part of your excavation. Cool. And the last one, using resources for grid lines. This was an idea that I had yesterday based on a comment from a customer where he was asking how he could use grid lines from drawings as a snapping function for resource placement or something like that. We don't have yet a grid line building tool, but I had the idea of creating a resource that is over here in the category site conditions. And inside site conditions, you're going to find them in additional resources. The name is vertical surface grid line. So how does this work, right? So when you input a line using this resource, you can draw the shape, you can draw the line that will be exactly on the grid line that you have on your drawing. And when you hit confirm, a new resource will show up over there that can be used as a vertical placement for objects. So let's say, for example, you want to place now kind of like a cube over here and whatnot, and that cube is rotated for some reason. Now you can go in and snap the face of this cube to that, and you kind of like using your grid line as a reference to place elements and things like that, right? So this is method one for you to place that line. And the other method is for you to place lines there, grid lines there evenly spaced with one another, right? So to do that, we're gonna do the same thing with this guy, and then we're gonna draw a line, but you need to draw this line only for the part of the grid lines that you have that have even spacing, right? And make sure that you start right on top of that line. And then when you hit confirm, like you're gonna have that same kind of thing over there going on. But what we're gonna do is that we're gonna go into the adjust function and we're gonna change the rotation, because then the rotation of those panels will go the other way. And when you hit done, the last thing that you need to do is to know what is the distance between these grid lines and put over here on the space between. So when I hit 4, like every one of these panels will show up on top of that line. And I can now go in the adjust function and then bring it over here. And I have now like several lines that I can, several references that I can snap to, right? So this is a good way for you to kind of like create some sort of reference that you can always snap your faces, your excavations, your I don't know, your cranes, any element that you place in there. Now you have like a face that you can use as a reference. Cool. So we get to the end of our presentation with 1 minute to spare, and I'm gonna use that